Okay, Chair, I think we're back on live stream and we've now started recording as well. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Thank you, members. We just had for the record, a quick break there to remind everybody we are still, of course, under the Code of Conduct and we are live streaming, so please be careful as we go ahead. We're now on agenda item 9 and Tim Child is going to present a report on Queen's Drive resourcing.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've spoken a lot in this meeting and in the last couple of meetings about temporary uses, because that is, by the very nature, the most time critical element. However, what is important, what's critical in all of this, and what I'm hearing from members of the public who've spoken today and at previous meetings, is what's most important is the longer term uses. But clearly there is a journey to get to that. So this report now is about future resourcing, and it's about those longer term uses. It's about the future potential for the site. So at the very first delivery group meeting back in October, I set out in my introductory briefing note that when members had made a decision on how they wished to take forward the site, I'd need to consider resourcing. Now, clearly there's no decision yet, and I suspect we're some way away from it, but I am all the time getting a sort of slightly clearer idea on how this is likely to move forward. I set out back in October that there was no longer capacity within the Place and Prosperity team to take the project forward. It now becoming clear that this wasn't a case as it was back in January of last year now, that we were going to be taking the site to the market as per the January 2020 cabinet decision. So the team, also since January 2020, the team have been restructured and are now responsible for taking forward a suite of other projects and interventions, Place and Prosperity based, that definitely now more than ever are key in terms of supporting our economic recovery once we come out of COVID. So in essence, there's the officers that were involved in this project over the last 5 or so years are now committed on other projects and have been for the last 12 months. So the report sets out proposals for resourcing the project over the coming 2 years and suggests 2 new posts for 2-year fixed term contracts to focus on Queen's Drive to take it forward, but also in relation to Exmouth projects as a whole. And shortly, I'll just discuss how we've reached that point in terms of the importance of Exmouth, the linkages between Exmouth as a town centre, which has actually already been picked up on by one of our public speakers earlier, and the seafront and Queen's Drive, and also the number of assets that we have in Exmouth, and the impact that COVID has had on the town generally, not necessarily seafront in the same way, but the town. So I suppose just a bit of context, the previous project officers who were involved in this are now spending approximately 90% of their time on other projects. And for the majority of the time, that's actually probably 100%. But in the lead up to some of the earlier, not this one, but the earlier delivery group meetings, I needed quite a lot of support to bring me up to speed on where we were. So hence some of their time involved there. But they're involved in other projects now. So paragraph 1.2 of the report addresses the types of work that the previous officers will be involved in moving forward, and the criticalness of that work to support economic recovery. And there's various references within the report to the Devon Economic prospectus to the pipeline of project interventions. So there's lots and lots of references there around the work that the team are already doing, and indeed will continue to do moving forward. I just want to pick out a few key parts to the report itself. So firstly, paragraph 1.5, and for me as an officer managing staff, this is really key to me. So I hope you don't mind, but I am just going to read this one paragraph. So so paragraph 1.5, this conclusion and therefore recommendation is no reflection whatsoever on the two officers concerned, and the service lead's thoughts on the project so far were made clear at the first delivery group meeting, which took place in October 2020. The project has delivered on key milestones for the benefit of Exmouth, including a road alignment, new car park, sideshore, and very popular temporary uses. But the phase 3 site is proving challenging to obtain consensus from members and the public on how to move this forward. Whilst past decisions might have proven unpopular over time, as officers, the role was to take forward the activities agreed by Cabinet and by Council, and this is what has been done. Now, I made that very clear in that in the very first delivery group meeting, but I just wanted to revisit that specifically at this meeting. And just, I suppose, just picking up on that particular element, there was a suggestion made earlier, in the previous meeting, I think it was the last meeting, about the neighbourhood plan, and also a brief reference earlier in this meeting to the neighbouring plan. Just wanting to make clear, clearly the I think it was mentioned by Reich on behalf of the Exmouth Community Association earlier in this meeting. And I just want to be clear, the officers involved in the project obviously had reference to the neighbourhood plan. That was absolutely key, and absolutely key also to informing the Hemingway design work. So I just wanted to make it clear that on that. So so this isn't about the two officers that were involved in this project. This is about how we move the project forward. Those two officers are now involved and at key stages in other projects. So for me, it's a decision about how do we resource this. And we clearly, in terms of delivering everything we need to achieve across the district, we need to bring in additional resource. Now it's whether we bring in that additional resource for other projects and move the previous project officers on this project back into this project, or we use those officers on the other projects and bring in a new resource for Queen's Drive and for Exmouth. And the recommendation within the report is that we bring in a new resource for Queen's Drive, but also to look at Exmouth as a whole. Paragraph 1.6 of the report covers the wider opportunities for Exmouth, which the new project officers can focus on alongside Queen's Drive. That I picked up on a comment earlier from one of our guest speakers, Catherine Causley, regarding the importance of looking at the town as a whole and being very mindful of the Queen's Drive site needing to complement the town centre. And again, with the proposal that's in front of you now, that again sort of strengthens all of those linkages and ensures that everything joins up. Paragraph 1.10 report sets out the proposals for the additional resource. Paragraph 1.11 addresses the finance implications. The recommendation within this report, if supported, will involve a request being made to Cabinet for a sum of £200,000 to fund those two fixed term contracts. And this is to come from the business rates pilot reserve. Probably the final thing just for me to sum up on is in paragraph 1.15 of the report. We set out, we've heard lots about temporary uses and the events team leading on those, and that's now been agreed for for this season. What I'm proposing is that in terms of the longer term uses, from a resourcing capacity, we need to put these on hold for Queen's Drive until such time, and Exmouth as a whole, until such time as we've got the new resource in place. So on that, as I've said, the project officers are heavily involved with the with place prosperity based interventions that feed directly into the economic recovery work that we're working on closely with Andy Wood's service area. So there's lots and lots of references to that within the report, and obviously happy to take questions on that rather than sort of regurgitating it all now. So happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Tim, for that report. I didn't entirely understand the very last point you made about something being on hold. Could you just repeat that, please?
Yeah, so paragraph 1.15, subject to the recommendation that comes out of this meeting, and then any subsequent decision by cabinet around funding for these new posts. The point I'm making is that for the time being, our focus clearly needs to be on temporary uses. Now, we've got a way forward with that based on the earlier report and the involvement of the events team. In terms of how we move forward the longer term proposals for this site, I'm proposing that we park that particular piece of work for the next couple of months into the summer until such time as, if supported today, that new dedicated resource for Exmouth is in place, rather than trying to sort of move things and struggle to move things forward over the next couple of months. So that's the long-term future uses, not the temporary uses.
Okay, so effectively, I think we meet again in March, probably May, probably July, something like that, every couple of months, I think. So really, by about sort of May, certainly by July, we are looking at the recruitment process pretty actively by then. Is that correct?
Hopefully sooner, yes.
Good.
The point really just making is really just for the next couple of months until we get those officers in post. And again, I think it would be key to get the officers in post and then for them to listen to what it is members want moving forward, rather than me trying to sort of start bits with other officers sort of in the meantime. But yes, a couple of months.
Okay, thank you, Tim, very much. Coming to members outside of the committee, please. First, Councillor Philip Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. And I find this report as well, in fact, working, and I don't know if I declare an interest really, but as a past chairman of the Regeneration Board, which is not this one, but a similar board previous to this, I find it a premature again on the funding of 200,000 upwards of two officers, when quite clearly there are the officers that were doing this are already still in employment by the local authority. I understand absolutely what Mr. Child has been saying regarding them have moved on to other projects. But again, my word of caution, Chair, is the money that is being spent in quite difficult times. In the many meetings that I have had at Cabinet and full council meeting, there is always a cry for more and more money from central government. And yet here we are, and it seems to be proposing to make recommendation to spend fairly large chunks of money within the budget. Now, if I take you to the point, just under point, the recommendation, Chair, which I'm sure you've read, it will say reason for recommendation. This has been discussed with the leader and with the economy and assets portfolio holder, and the report asked for to enable the delivery group to consider this proposal as a way of resourcing the project moving forward. There doesn't seem to be anything within that from Mr. Davey as our finance officer or from Mark Williams as our CEO about what their reasons or what their thoughts are in moving this forward. And just for clarification from you, Chair, as with the leader, was there discussions, have there been discussions with the leader, CEO or Mr. Davey as head of finance, to actually put some meat on the bone regarding how all these things of spending money are going to work out in going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Skinner. Delighted to answer that in two parts. First of all, I suppose it would be a fascinating exercise, but sort of slightly self-indulgent, to look back at the squillions of pounds of public money that were wasted on consultants, legal fees to hector, and occasionally, well, I'll be careful with my language, act to the disadvantage of local businesses by this council and its former administrations. So this, I have to say, is a drop in the ocean in respect to that. I think we must almost always be incredibly respectful that Exmouth is our largest community by a very, very large stretch, and its population pay a huge amount in our council tax. I think we must also be mindful that it is our principal seaside resort, and that drives the economy of the entire area and will help drive the recovery of the entire area if, as we anticipate, staycation summers are here to stay, and I suspect they are for the coming years. To go to the finance side, yes, I'm happy for Mr. Child to answer that, but Tim has, of course, will have discussed this with Simon Davies, so probably either of them a better place to explain the pool of money from which this is being taken. So Tim or Simon, whoever would like to come forward. Thank you.
If I can, Chair. So to answer Councillor Skinner's question, in terms of the drafting of this report, I was involved with Tim Child. In terms of the funding, as reported in the report, it's coming from the business rent retention reserve that the council set up a few years ago now. If Councillor Skinner probably remembers, we entered into a 100% retention pool for a one-off year. We bid to government, and that brought us in just over £2 million one-off additional sum in business rates. At the time, the council agreed to put that aside into a reserve to help us with economic activity in the district based on growing economic activity, sort of regeneration, but also to protect the economy of East Devon at the time. Now you'll be seeing on the back of sort of the pandemic, in terms of recovery, a number of proposals and projects coming forward for the use of that reserve in order to meet its intention for that economy growth, if you like, to help with coming out of the pandemic for East Devon. So in terms of the budget, I've been reporting through, and I get the point that's being made in terms of the significant difficulties we've got coming up in 22-23 onwards in terms of balancing our budgets. That's in connection with the day-to-day costs of the council. That's why I'm content in terms of the recommendation here, because this money is coming from a specific reserve. I think that it meets the council's requirement for that reserve. It's a council's resolution to use that money as it wishes, but this does link very closely to the reason it was set up.
Thank you very much, Simon, for that. I hope that provides Councillor Skinner with the reassurance he needed. I think a reading of the report made that quite clear. Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm also concerned about the funding of these posts, but also with any future delays, because my view on the Queen's Drive delivery group, and I wasn't averse to the idea of a Queen's Drive delivery group, because we want to progress the project as quickly as we can. But now we're being told that the officers who are going to drive this forward are probably not going to be appointed until the summer. Once they've been appointed, they've got to acquaint themselves with the future project and all the various implications there are for Exmouth. So they need to familiarise themselves with this project. And I can't see why there are already officers who have been dealing with this scheme, who are very familiar with the project, could take hence. And if it's felt that we need to spend money for the reserves on economic projects, then bring in new officers to deal with these other projects that need to be brought forward. But as far as I can see, while we've got officers who are very familiar with this project, we don't need immediately to spend money from our reserves on these officers, and we can get on with it post haste rather than waiting at least until the summer.
Thank you, Councillor Moulding. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Moulding for his input. I think I understand now why Exmouth Regeneration Board did nothing in 7 years now, because, you know, where we're constantly harking on the past. Mr. Child has been very clear in his report. The time and the likes of Bill Grimsey, who is, you know, a very well-respected person in economic terms, he's released numerous papers to say actually the time for creativity and impetus is now. In the middle of a pandemic is actually when you start bringing these things out of the bag. You know, Mr. Child has said that the officers we have been moved to other areas. There will always be other demands on council employee time and on officers' time. So what you have here is an opportunity to use money that was ring-fenced for the betterment and for innovation in our district. I can speak to, and I will speak to Andy Wood. We have sums of money within the ARG to spend on resilience and to spend on innovation and to really jumpstart our economy. So I think for the sake of taking money from reserves, and what are reserves for, if not for a rainy day? Well, the rainy day is here. The umbrellas are up. We need this now. There has been so much prevarication in previous administrations. We need to move now, and that's what this group is doing. So I'm afraid this sort of hand-wringing, oh, it's too much now, well, that's by the by. You know, we have a means of paying for it. We have the impetus to do it. We have a committed Queen's Drive delivery group who are focused on delivering this. We're not going to dwell on the mistakes of the past. We're going to move forward with vigour and with just determination to get this going forwards. So I'm afraid I don't recognise what Councillor Moulding says. I'm afraid, you know, that's a bit of just navel gazing. I'm afraid that will get us nowhere. We need to be creative. We need to be demonstrative and positive in our forward-looking approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. And of course, we must thank Councillor Moulding and Councillor Skinner for their previous role. I've never been quite sure what the amount is, but I think it was the £3.5 million of our East Devon money that was used to build the extended Queen's Drive. So I think weighing those two things in the balance is an interesting exercise. Councillor Dan Ledger, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think respectfully, I'm going to have to just disagree with Councillor Moulding and Councillor Skinner. I think it's one of the current mantras of the government at the moment is to build back better. And that's exactly what we can do if we dedicate the right resources. Currently, the officers in post that are looking after this area, this isn't the sole thing, the sole purpose of their roles. They do tend to the other parts of the district, and that's something that we need to remember here. I think with bringing in this additional resource, it will help lighten the load, but also focus hearts and minds onto the task at hand. And I think that's what we really need at this current time, is focus and pressure on this area really to really bring this project forward and see it to completion really. So I'm happy to propose the recommendations as stated. I look forward to seeing this project progress.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Dan Ledger. Councillor Jeff Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to come in so late on this project, but I'll be on the phone with a number of other issues. I'm involved in a lot of developments and plans at the moment to plan for a better new normal coming out of this crisis and into the next one. and what we're proposing at Greens Drive at the moment is to plan for a better new normal, and we've got to bear in mind that Exmouth is one of our leading resorts. I don't want to offend anyone from Sidmouth on this, but staycation is going to be something that's going to be happening in the next couple of years. It's going to be difficult to have holidays abroad. Staycation is going to be here for a number of years, and the sooner we get on with this, the better. So what I'd say is stop faffing about and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to come to, from the Town Council, Councillor Aurora Bailey, please. Oh, that went well, didn't it? I suspect Aurora's pressed the wrong button. So let's come to Councillor Steve Gazzard then, please, and wait for Aurora's pleasure.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very grateful to Tim Childs for the in-depth report, and grateful to Simon for his input. And it clearly states in the report where the money will come from. I think overall, the people of Exmouth want this to progress, and they want to move it forward. And unfortunately, to be able to move it forward, we're going to have to spend some money. Now, quite clearly, Tim Childs has said that those officers that were involved with the project before have been transferred to other work, and rightly so. That's making best use of the resources in the situation that we find ourselves in. And it would be, I think, wrong to now move those officers away from what they've got embedded in and hoping to bring to completion. But I think the other point that Tim Childs made in the report is not just for Queen's Drive, it's for also, as has been mentioned by members of the public, the regeneration of Exmouth Town High Street itself. And it's been recognised by, I think, government that Exmouth falls in one of those areas that is really going to struggle to cope with coming back to whatever normal is going to be. So I think it's a two-pronged issue where this money is going to be used on, A, for the Queen's Drive delivery, and for the promotion and regeneration, if you like, of Exmouth, because Exmouth, I'm sure as you all know, if you go down there, is really struggling at the moment, and it is, and proud to say, it is the biggest town in Devon. So, we do need a lot of help and support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. Am I hearing a seconding of Councillor Ledger's proposal in that?
Yes, Chair, I'll second that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor West, come in. Okay, thank you. Councillor, thank you for that, Councillor Gazzard. Councillor Ollie Davey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're all falling over ourselves to second it. Yeah, I very much welcome this. I think it signals a very important investment in Exmouth, and I think actually this is what councils need to be doing at the moment, is investing in the future. I've got a question for Tim. I don't know what a development surveyor is. I've got a vague idea, but I don't want to make any assumptions. So I wonder if you can just clarify that. I hope we can continue meeting as a group, because I think we can still kind of try and begin to frame a vision for the future. So I think it'd be good if we can continue to do that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the public speakers for coming along, particularly those who keep coming along, because I think it's really useful to have their input. But I think I talk a lot about signals, because I know how East Devon has been perceived in Exmouth in the past. And I think these signals are important. And I think this should be the subject of a press release, and perhaps the leader's next article in the journal as well, because I think it's important people understand that the East Devon does want to invest in Exmouth. As Councillor Gazzard pointed out, we are the largest town in East Devon, and with some of the greatest problems in terms of low income, poorly paid jobs and so on. So if Tim can just answer my question about the development surveyor, that's enough from me.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. I can answer that question. I was worried you were going to refer me to a particular paragraph in the report. I can't actually access the report at the moment because of the issues with IT. But in terms of that question, yes, I can answer that easily. You know, I think there were two sort of questions. But firstly, development surveyors. So we're looking for a so the two posts. Firstly, development surveyor. So MRICS surveyor, so chartered surveyor with experience of delivering practical intervention stroke developments. Now I say interventions as well. This is not, I'm not looking for someone who is experienced only in commercial. I'm looking at someone who is also able to bring forward community projects, because I think there's a bigger question here as to what the longer term uses are. But it's someone who can practically make a project work and deliver it so that what we've all been talking about over the last 10, 15 years comes to fruition, whether that be commercial, whether it be community, whether it be a combination of each, but it's practical delivery. And then I know the question relates to this, but then the second post is much more of sort of an engagement consultation, an engagement type post to ensure that what we do we achieve what those of Exmouth want. We listen, we take on board, and we deliver, and we involve. And just picking up, there was a second, it wasn't a question, but a comment regarding the delivery group. Yeah, absolutely. The point I was making earlier around being able to move forward on it was just on the basis I only have myself limited capacity, so it's just to sort of set expectations. But yeah, well, I'll be updating delivery group, and obviously in terms of how we're getting on the recruitment timescales. So yeah, you'll be hearing more on this at each subsequent meeting over the next couple of months.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yes, and just to reinforce that answer to Councillor Davey, as far as I'm aware, this delivery group is here to stay forever until the last brick has been delivered on the last building. So yes, and I you know, from my point of view, this suggestion came forward from Tim and from his team, and obviously he cleared it, you know, with Simon in terms of where we would find the money from within, and the economy portfolio and I were delighted to say, let's work up the report on that and bring that to you today, to this committee, and see what you thought. And it seems to be getting quite a good response so far, but not to predetermine any future vote. Councillor Chris Wright, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just important to note, and perhaps some have not realised in the report itself, that there's 50% of their time will be focused on Queen's Drive. There's a lot of other projects, a lot of other areas in Exmouth for these two potential officers to get involved in. Absolutely right. Now is the time to push on and build a better economy, better environment for us all to live in. And I think, you know, potentially one or two aspects of what we're looking to deliver in Queen's Drive may well have changed since previous officers have been involved. So, you know, a fresh set of eyes is never a bad thing, I would suggest. But it's really important, I think, that we look at this as Exmouth as a whole, not specifically Queen's Drive. And, you know, the workload on those officers in that department, for us to be able to say, we want you to do this and we want you to do that, which is something we as members regularly do, the resources have to be there for them to be able to implement that. Otherwise, these meetings, with all due respect, are pretty pointless if there isn't the resources to actually implement it. It's about getting things done on the ground. And that is something that this group has said it wants to do. So for me, it's potentially a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chris Wright. So we're heading towards 1. It'd be really nice to have this meeting done by then, please. I've got Councillor Paul Hayward and Councillor Nick Hookway. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to sum up, if I may, bringing your request to a logical point that we sort of get this over the line. That I can't actually think, apart from the Cranbrook project, which we've pushed forward and we've proceeded with, but unlike anything else in East Devon, the issue of Exmouth being the biggest town, being an incredible seafront, a huge commercial town centre, I can't think of one other project that probably impacts on every single portfolio holder in the cabinet. It goes completely across the board. So getting this moving, and I completely agree with what Councillor Wright has just said. That's our job, is to move things along. It's not to have endless meetings and endless consultations which just go around in circles. The people of Exmouth, the people of East Devon, want this push forward, and this administration, and I hope any administration, actually listens to the people who vote us in and take this forward. I suppose my final point would be, I'm reassured as Cabinet Member for Economy that having seen a picture of Messrs Jenrick and Jupp, our 2 MPs, sitting cordially together over a pint of Doombar, other drinks are available, that the £20 million that they got elected on the back of will soon arrive, because Exmouth wants that money. We're entitled to a share of that money. Give us the 20 million quid. You got elected on the back of it, so let's have the money. Let's see it. Give us it, and we'll spend it for the benefit of Exmouthians. And apologies to all Exmouthians if that's not the correct term. You know what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Exmouthians, Councillor Hayward, Exmouthians.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. I'm from Slough. I talk a bit funny.
I was born in Exmouth, so I come from Exmouth.
Excellent. Well, then perhaps, Councillor Skinner, you can give Mr. Jupp a ring and see where the 20 million quid is he promised on the front of the newspaper just before the last election. Councillor Nick Hookway, please.
You didn't give me a chance to respond, did you, Chair?
Yes, if that's a yes. What's the answer to that then?
Well, the answer to that question, of course, what we need to do first is get our ducks in a row and decide on the things that we want to deliver. And of course, putting officers in place is absolutely one of those things. But to redesign and redevelop a town centre, when I would believe that probably every town centre is struggling in the way that it set itself up previously, is probably one of the most difficult jobs that any authority up and down the land would be able to deliver. And in fact, I'll go further. I doubt that there are too many that actually have the skill set to be able to do it, because the feast is, the moving feast is that town centres, as we know them in our generation, in how they've been in the past, are not necessarily how they need to be into the future. The exciting part is, for me, for Exmouth and the regeneration of it, is that if we look at it big enough and globally enough, we can actually look at designing it and doing it in such a way that we take on that change of what we call public participation in buying of product, is changed from the normal way that we used to shop because of online shopping into a whole new different way. And the exciting challenge going forward is going to be in defining what that is. So yes, the answer to the question is, to what you put forward, is Mr. Jupp did go forward in trying to secure with Mr. Jenrick £20 million of Exmouth. And I believe, provided all things staying equal and something doesn't pop out of the blue that none of us saw coming, then that is something that Mr. Jupp is going to deliver on, and I will be supporting him on that, and I hope that other members of this authority would be as well.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Well, I take that as an endorsement then, and us putting the officers in place to be able to help him spend the £20 million when it goes, when it arrives.
But,
so,
Chair, could I just be absolutely
well, actually,
clear?
no, we need to move on now. So I think we've got a
absolutely
proposal on the table from Councillor Hayward, and we had a seconder from Councillor Hookway. So can we now go to a vote on that now, please, Sue? Thank you. In which case you need to raise your hands. You know what to do, everybody.
Sorry, Chair, it'd help if I unmuted myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, coming back to Tim, I wrote down AOB, but I don't know if there was any other AOB from you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if between Angela and I, we could just raise a couple of issues, but I've also myself picked up on your comment only 5 minutes ago, which was basically, let's try and get this done by 1. So if you could please give me just a couple of minutes for Angela and I, and we will make it very, very brief.
Okay, you got 60 seconds each. Your time starts now.
Exmouth, well, my bit, Exmouth Miniature Railway. Councillor Hookway, did you want to put something forward in respect of that group following some emails that I've had in the last couple of days?
Well, thank you, Tim. Just so that we add them to a possible list of attractions for the group to consider. Yes, please, yes.
Thank you. So they are a group who have approached me, I think, via Councillor Hookway initially. They are very interested in being included in our deliberations regarding temporary and possibly permanent uses. So so we will bear those in mind with obviously others as well, and through Angela and her team. So can I now pass over to Angela, please?
Thank you. Just to say, really, as Tim alluded to earlier, that we've got a couple of propositions that have been put forward to us for Queen's Drive. One is a couple of companies in Exmouth, or existing businesses in Exmouth, have asked if they can have a seafront bar. It's a semi-permanent and totally removable bar that they want to put up along the seafront. And we've also got an organisation that have come to us and they want to do a fitness pod, which is going to be bespoke, the first of its type, we believe, in the UK. And we found a space along Queen's Drive that isn't being used at the moment. So I think our question to you is, do we follow our usual process and consult on these and see where we go? Or do these type of things need to come through you or through the delivery group to take forward?
Okay, thank you, Angela. Can you just remind me, please, what's the time scale on this for you?
So the fitness pod, for example, if we can go ahead on that one, they'll need planning permission. So the sooner we can give them a steer on whether we're supporting that, the better. The seafront bar is obviously, it's a completely different proposition, and one that, you know, obviously does need a lot of discussion, because again, it's, do we need to look at Exmouth as a whole and Queen's Drive as well, and decide whether this is something that we should be supporting? I don't know. We need some guidance really on how to proceed with that one.
Okay. Yes. Back to Tim and then Councillor Paul Hayward, please. Tim.
Thank you. So thank you, Angela, for that. So what I would propose for consideration, obviously by members, is, as some of these types of requests tend to be quite time critical, and I suppose there's a danger that we end up diluting the key purpose of the Queen's Drive Delivery Group, that those sorts of requests, they are outside of the event space. They're all right, they're along the seafront, but they're not specifically related to Queen's Drive space. Those sorts of issues get picked up through our usual events procedures, which will involve consulting with ward members. So there'll be members of this delivery group who become very aware of it through that process. And then on the basis that we've already said that Angela will be coming along to these future meetings for this current season, that we just provide sort of an update because I think these meetings are every 6 weeks, just so that the wider delivery group is aware of how these things are all fitting together, but rather than everything needing to come specifically to this group for decision. Clearly, if there's something controversial, then as officers, I may well suggest to Angela, look, I want this to physically come to the delivery group.
Okay, thank you, Tim, for that. Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just on that one, Tim, I just feel slightly uneasy that things may be being progressed by officers without due consultation with this group, proper consultation and a discussion. Because, I mean, although you said what these things are, a bar and a fitness pod, what exactly is that, you know? And where I think we have to, I think we just have to be consulted properly about that and know have a bit more detail. Without, I understand the time scale, especially the fitness pod, if it's going to need planning permission, but I just need it to be a little bit tighter than that, I think, personally, with more information, perhaps.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Let's think about how we can do that. I see, Peter Gilpin, do please come in, please, from LED Leisure.
Thank you, Chairman. Earlier we were talking about support for LED and how LED fits in on the seafront with Ocean, and here we are discussing a couple of things which would be in direct competition with LED. So you would be reducing our performance if these were accepted without a due procurement process, because these are both things which we would be very keen on delivering ourselves. So I'm concerned to hear that we might be talking as a council with individual organisations without these opportunities being properly examined and procured to give LED an opportunity to expand its activities and provide a better return to the council.
Thank you, Peter. This micromanagement can come in handy sometimes, can't it? Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, yeah, well, just from those last three speakers, I think, yes, there's definitely a need for consultation. There's planning issues, there's licensing issues, the issue of the pod, whereabouts it would be on Queen's Drive. But I do agree that from what Mr. Charles said, that, you know, you run the risk of each new project diluting what the Queen's Drive delivery group is trying to do. Effectively, you need to keep them apart. There are parallels, there's synergies between them. But if each new opportunity then takes you further down, that's why you never get anywhere. You just need to almost just concentrate on what you're doing and accept that Exmouth is so attractive, people will constantly want to set things up. On the point of that Councillor Armstrong raised, yes, councillors need to be aware of what's going on. Certainly the ward members do, and the Cabinet needs to be aware because there's implications there. Ultimately, the council needs to know what's going on in its patch. Yeah, the issue of competing attractions, this is a really tricky one because arguably anyone has a right to set up an attraction anywhere they want. And if they set one up in the very top of it, of Exmouth, will that impact on LED? It's a capitalist world we live in. And for myself, when I was a handyman, other handyman set up, I couldn't object. You know, I had no say in that because, you know, that's part and parcel of the capitalist world. And LED are a commercial organisation. You know, Mr. Gilpin said that earlier. You know, District Council has no right to interfere and tell LED what it does with its building, how it prices its product, how it pitches it. So actually, if the District Council receives an application for something that yields benefits, yes, there would be an absolute courtesy in liaising with and incorporating some discussions. But I personally would feel quite uncomfortable of saying no to people because it actually stops another organisation earning revenue when that company is a tenant of the District Council. That seems a really sort of incestuous relationship. So I agree there's some negotiations to be had, but I certainly wouldn't ever say we're not going to consider it or we're going to view it in a less than equitable light simply because of other repercussions to a tenant of the District Council. But I do take on board what Mr. Gilpin says.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Chris Wright, please.
I think it was just about a level playing field that that Peter Gilpin was talking about. That you know, it should be if there are opportunities going to come up, particularly if you're talking about things like bars, cafes, and things like that, that it's available to all, not potentially to one. And I think, you know, I take on board what he's saying there, in that they're running a business there. They may want to then apply to be able to run another opportunity. If they're then not successful in that, then that's so be it, because the council decides that they would choose another tenant. I just think it's a case of being open, that if there are opportunities coming up for things like that, that it's available to all. If they're new opportunities, would be my point. And I'm just seeing the note, open procurement. I mean, that seems perfectly reasonable to me, I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Nick Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as one of the ward members on Queen's Drive, I would certainly like to have this group involved in any discussions about any proposed new ventures on the seafront. I was aware that there was one proposal that came through last year to do with putting in access for wheelchair users, and with sort of large trolleys capable of going over the sand. Now, I know there was a fundraising campaign for that, which was quite successful, and I'd be very interested to see if that could be developed. And the point I'm making is that if we're just thinking about fitness, or I'm thinking about fitness, perhaps I'm wrong on this, I'm always thinking about young and fairly athletic people doing fitness and getting their fitness up to a better level, which is fine. But I do think on the seafront, we need to try to cater for everybody, okay? So there are some people who are in wheelchairs. I think we ought to try to do something for them as well. It isn't just for a particular group. We need to try to cover as many people as possible who want to get on the beach and enjoy the seafront. So I certainly think we do need to have a look at any proposals that come forward to this group. And in terms of licensing, I think we need to think very carefully about where we're going to put additional bars, because that may cause problems and we may get residents getting very concerned about that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think, Tim, we're getting a flavour of the sense of direction here.
You disagree with me. That's fine. That's fine. That was why I wanted to raise it.
Yeah.
I suppose question back to Angela. So the message that I seem to be picking up so far is that the delivery group would like to properly consider those and indeed any such propositions that come forward regarding the seafront. Angela, there's another meeting in 6 weeks' time. Does that cause a huge issue?
It's just how we go back to people in the meantime. But I think people are absolutely desperate at the moment to get their business propositions up and running, ready for the next season. And if that does start in April, fingers crossed, we're really up against it for the one that the fitness pod take on board the needing to the open procurement, and that's something we can definitely achieve. But 6 weeks is, I think, would make it very difficult for either of these to be ready for the summer, not for the next season, not for April, but definitely. Still going to be difficult to achieve for the summer, I think.
Okay, thanks, Angela. We're caught on the horns of a dilemma here, aren't we? We are nearly in February. Easter is round the corner, and we don't meet for 6 weeks, which isn't really any use in these circumstances, is it? Ideally, no criticism, this would have been on the agenda, and we could have had some thought about it beforehand. I guess you're going to just have to leave that with us, Tim, and we'll have to see whether we can shape some kind of way ahead, whether it's moving the next meeting forward, or I'm not quite sure. But anyway, other people have ideas. Megan, Councillor Armstrong, please. I'm
just trying to think of a sort of a resolution to the dilemma, really. It's really, I'm speaking, I suppose, through the chair to Angela. is it the fitness pod that's that's the most concerning, because they would need planning approval? Is that the one that's really causing the time limit, I suppose?
I suspect that they would both need planning permission.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Because I'm thinking it would still have to go through planning approval anyway, and they may, if they want to put forward planning applications and then risk the fact that it may not be approved. That's their risk, I suppose, isn't it? But at least it would get them going. That's what I'm thinking. But the other thing I was just quickly going to say, Chair, was I think the whole reason for the delivery group is to, as I understand it, how it was set up, and the regeneration board previously, was about looking at what we're trying to do comprehensively and as a whole with the seafront. And what concerns me is if we have one little thing popping up here and another little thing popping up there, is it going to be fitting with the overall scheme, if you like, the overall vision of what we all have for the seafront? And we may not have that vision yet, but that's what bothers me about just doing a bit here and a bit there and a bit there. You know, we have to think of the whole thing and how it's all going to fit together at the end of the day. So that's the reason why I would quite like to have discussed these a bit more, really, so that we get it fitting with the, you know, have we got a vision yet? And have these items that are coming forward now going to fit with that vision? So that's all I wanted to say. It's just a little word of warning. Otherwise, we'll be going down the road we've been down before, where we're doing a bit here and a bit there, and none of it works, basically, or some of it doesn't work.
No, that's quite right, Megan. I think we'd all agree with that. And you know, the agenda has been structured that we know that we've just had an agenda item 8, Queen's Drive temporary uses for this coming year. That's been one of the main things on this agenda. And we have got to somehow help move this forward. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I don't really see a problem, Chair. I mean, we have East Devon street scene have a system. If somebody wants to put an event on or wants to do something on their land during the summer, they go through the process of going through getting an application. And if, as these two would need planning permission, I mean, surely the applicants will go and try and get planning permission first. If they don't get planning permission, obviously the issue doesn't go any further. But I understand what Peter Gilpin is saying, is that if this was going to form part of our overall picture, it should be, if it was an idea of ours, we'd open it up to everybody. But obviously these are individuals that want to do something. So I'd be content with to allow the system to operate as it does at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Yes, just very quickly, Chair. What concerns me is that you've just made a decision to appoint 2 new posts in the terms of a development surveyor and a project officer, and I don't totally disagree with that. I was concerned about the spending, but the principle is fine. And if that's the case, then surely if the whole thing is going to be integrated, then the 2 items that have been suddenly brought before this group on this occasion should be taken in the whole round and considered alongside the overall development of Queen's Drive, which you just determined.
Okay. I think with respect, Councillor Moulding, I think that may have misread the agenda. So obviously the officers wouldn't be starting until the earliest of July. And what they're looking is at the agenda moving forward, and looking, of course, at the town as well. But what is clear as current and urgent business that we have as this committee is to do something for this summer. And we have always understood that. And that is not, I think it was made clear earlier, that the key officers on that are Tim, who is there in post, and Angela in events. And what she's trying to do is accept ideas coming in from everybody. To be frank with you, I didn't know this was coming up as AOB. It's not ideal, and I'm not quite sure what a way out is. But let's go to Councillor. We've got Joe Wibley, then Paul Hayward, then Ollie Davey. Councillor Wibley, please.
Yeah, hi. I think if we trust in planning and licensing as sort of entities, then we have to let them run their course and trust that they will make the right decision on these things. I mean, in terms of like the overall, why are we employing people to look at the overall vision of the place and then plopping things sort of willy-nilly along the seafront? These are temporary, as far as I'm led to believe. And can you still hear me? Yes, I can.
Yes, so can I.
Okay.
Yes.
No,
Yes,
Mr. Arnott, Councillor Arnott froze. The other thing is, in terms of we're talking about this being competition for LED. These were ideas that people brought from the outside. We can't. Every time anybody has an idea, we can't then go back to LED and say, "Do you want to do this?" Because that's not. It's just not how things work. It's as Councillor Hayward sort of referred to the capitalist culture. That's not how things work. Somebody has a good idea, they look to see if they can follow it through. So I personally have no problem with people coming forward with these things. Thank you, Chair, if indeed you are still there.
I think the chair has gone, so I'll assume until he manages to get back on.
This keeps happening. I'm so sorry. I'm now back.
And he's back again. Hooray!
I'm so sorry.
You missed such a good point, Councillor Arnott.
It was okay. From memory, we've got Councillor. Well, we had Councillor Hayward, didn't we?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very, very brief. Councillor Wibley has sort of summed up most of what I was going to say. Again, I empathise, but people, as Councillor Wibley says, people have come forward with innovative ideas. Now, some of them will be small scale, some will be large scale. We can't stop people having ideas, and some of them will involve alcohol, some will involve recreation, some may involve climate change, some may involve education, or just sitting on the beach and, I don't think donkeys are allowed anymore, or, riding a virtual donkey through goggles. I don't know. But the point is, everyone has the opportunity. LED has the opportunity to present to us an innovative campaign of summer activities. We will consider those. The events team, Angela, will consider them. And if they require planning permission, planning will do its thing. If they require licensing will do its thing. I agree that it has impacts, but everything has an impact. And we can't be seen, and this is reputational, this is from the wider world outside of LED and the council. I don't think we can be seen as a council as stymieing innovative and creative and entrepreneurial activities that add to the mix and the tourist blend of what Exmouth can offer, simply because no one else thought of them before. If other people think of them, fine. If we have a temporary space for the former car park, then yes, we can go out to an open bid process. Next summer, or this summer, we seemingly will be going out to tender for the catering opportunities. But that will be a process. But if someone pops up and says, I'd like to, for the summer season, do some, juggling activities on the beach, or I'll set up a virtual donkey ride, and maybe that's something I can take forward myself. Sounds like a great opportunity. On the green space opposite the ocean, then those people will come forward and do that. And yes, there should be a level playing field, but I don't want to stifle, what essentially has always been part of a seaside culture. People pop up. Punch and Judy pops up. No one asks to be consulted on that. That can draw people away from other activities. So
right,
I think,
Councillor Hayward, can we move on now?
Yes, thank you.
We're going down the. Don't forget, a lot of our younger members won't even know what a Punch and Judy man is, probably. So it's difficult. This we've got a portfolio holder in Jeff Young, under whom these things sit. We've got a licensing formal process. We have a planning formal process. We have an events manager, and we have got a summer coming upon us quite soon. And we don't wish to discourage people providing things for our visitors down on the seafront. Tim, you've heard all this. Can you can you cut the Gordian knot in any way?
Yeah, so I've just gone, my IT's working better now. I've just gone back to the terms of reference. Your terms of reference are to take forward a successful delivery of Exmouth Queen's Drive redevelopment phase 3. We've then added in also the Ocean building. The terms of reference doesn't relate to everything along the seafront. The reason, and I in some ways regret raising this, but it was right to raise it. The reason for raising it is because we already have existing arrangements in place. Angela gets requests in all the time for temporary uses all over the district. We have an established process, licensing, consulting with ward members, etc., etc., etc. The reason for me flagging it up today was really just for information to bear in mind in terms of the wider seafront. If what Angela was proposing here, and if it was, it wouldn't be an event, it would be dealt with through my service in terms of a formal lease. But if Angela was suggesting something that was going to be here for the next 5 years, then along the seafront, then I absolutely would be bringing it to this group, because it then impacts on the vision for Queen's Drive phase 3. But these are temporary uses, seasonal uses. And it comes back to what is the purpose of the delivery group, and the existing terms of reference. It doesn't include visibility, or doesn't include decision making or involvement in everything that happens anywhere along the seafront. So, so I suppose I'd go back to where I started, which is that. We were raising this. Ward members will already be aware of it, certainly in terms of the gym pod, because it's following that procedure, which is established across the district. I think it was absolutely right to raise it at this meeting to ensure the visibility of this in terms of the wider discussions. But in terms of it needing it's ultimately a decision for members. But there is a danger that we complicate things to the extent that I think, which was the point you were getting to, Chair, which was we complicate things to the extent that people then don't come forward with these ideas. These are temporary event ideas, hence they're coming through to Angela. They're not long-term arrangements.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. I'm not sure that helps us get any further. But yes, it's clear, isn't it, that there's an existing framework for this. If this was for anything that was going in for anything other than 2 or 3 months, then we would want to be front and centre of that. But there are a number of existing council structures and officers which cover this already. So I suppose as long as anybody as long as we're making sure potential franchisees or whatever, stallholders are aware there's an opportunity down there, which presumably they know there's a seafront and they know there's a summer coming, then I don't think our method can be queried. I don't think. Can I ask you to do like 60 seconds each maximum? Councillor Maddie Chapman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just slightly confused here. You are employing 2 more officers to overlook for Queen's Drive. Angela has control of the site at the back of Queen's Drive, which she can let out. I do not see any reason why these businesses can't go there temporarily for this summer to see how it works down on the seafront. And then when the officers are in place, you can then decide if these businesses should be on beachside or on the Queen's Drive site. I don't see, it just seems to me, a way out of it, because they wouldn't need planning permission to be on East Devon's land. They might need licensing, agreed, but it is East Devon land at the back of the Queen's Drive site, which Angela's got control of.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Ollie Davey, please, 60 seconds if you can.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we've talked already about micromanagement, and I think we're in danger of doing it here. There's been talk about a procurement process. My understanding is that's if the council is buying something. We're not. We're just giving permission for somebody to run something on the site. it happens that the land belongs to us. So we have established procedures for that, and I think those should just go through. I don't think it's for us to suggest where they go or what they do. They'll identify the site for themselves and ask for permission to use it. In any case, I take Councillor Armstrong's point about having a coherent vision for the seafront, but pop-ups are part of that plan, and this is for this year only that we're talking about. But I would hope it won't interfere with the proposal for the beach wheelchairs on Exmouth seafront, which our town clerk has alluded to.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Gazzard, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. I just think that we're in danger of over complicating the issues. These are, as I understand it, going to be temporary events. We have a system of where people can apply for temporary events. So I think they just go through the system that is already there for them to use.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gazzard. And Councillor Chris Wright, finally, please.
Thank you. I think the key is in the word temporary. As long as those business operations are aware of the fact that it's a short-term operation, because if we go back to our report on Appendix A that we looked at earlier, we did mention in there competition from adjacent attractions that are there on perhaps on a more longer term basis. I think when we get to the procurement side of things, I do believe there is and I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong, but a situation where if you are offering opportunities to businesses on a more longer term scale, that does actually have to go out to the wider public so that you can ensure you're getting the best deal for the council. I think in terms of short term, if we tie the events team's hands anymore, there's no point in having them. And I don't believe that these sites potentially are looking at the Queen's Drive site. I think we've got to give the events team, when we're talking about short-term opportunities to see if we can see something that we then all go in 12 months' time, wasn't that great? Let's have it again. If we don't do it, we'll never know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wright. A lot of sense in that. I think the best we can do now is to note what Mr. Child has advised us, which we already knew, really. I think the general consensus is we mustn't try and micromanage forward each pop-up as it comes forward. And I think that's probably all we can say, isn't it, at this stage? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's leave that at that then. Thank you very much. Right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's agenda. As you all know, there is a script that helps you fly out of these things. I can't see mine, so I'll try and busk it. Yes, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Thank you particularly to the members of the public and the officers for fantastic reports, and to all members for really valuable contributions. Please remember that even though the meeting will end soon, you'll still be online, visible and audible.